We have a little different format today, Tammy, right? I mean,
Yeah, I'm excited about this. We're going to talk about one of my favorite races.
yeah. This is, and I'm gonna fully admit that this is Tammy's brainchild. She's the one that thought of this. She's the one that kind of thought about getting a group of people together to talk about a race before the race occurs this year, to get kind of a roundtable of people together to be able to provide advice and what to expect for that race. And this week we're going to highlight the Chicago Marathon. So we have a wonderful roundtable of participants today to talk about the Chicago Marathon, and we'll get to our guests here in a minute. But I'm super excited. I mean, for me, I have run Chicago Marathon twice, back in 2015 and 2017. It was my first marathon, so I haphazardly signed up for it, not knowing what to expect for the training. Only about a year after I had started running, I ran the marathon. It was almost exactly a year. It was a great experience. So I'm super excited to be able to highlight that as our first the Endurance House podcast race preview. So yeah. So Tammy, what's your background with the Chicago Marathon?
So, as everybody should know, there's listened to one episode because I feel like it's mentioned in everyone. I don't run marathons, but I do love watching them, and I do love supporting runners. I was lucky to live in Chicago for 14 years, and every marathon Sunday, it's like a holiday. I loved it. And I would try to get friends to come with me to get up early and go watch the marathon. But oftentimes I would just be out there myself watching because it was so much fun. And nobody wants to get up early to watch a bunch of runners if they're not a runner. My last year living in Chicago, I had the pleasure of volunteering, working at a water stop at I can't remember the mile marker. I know where it was. It was in Old Town. And I worked at a water stop, and I ended up actually raking the cups, which I got blisters on my hands, and I was up from really early in the morning and I was there until, when the last runners come through. The longest day, I say. It was harder than running the marathon. Maybe it was different. Maybe it wasn't harder, but I walked away with blisters just like the runners did. But that is my relationship with the marathon. I always love watching it. It is a fun October day, always.
Yeah, can't wait to hear that perspective. Next on the roundtable panel, we have Byron Crawford. Byron, you actually, I think, ran it with me when on my first one. Why don't you mind introducing yourself and your relationship to the Chicago Marathon?
Okay, well, I'm Byron Crawford. My relationship to the Chicago Marathon is similar to you, Jeff. The Chicago Marathon was my very first marathon, and I had, really kind of fell in love with the whole event of, just getting away. So my wife, Kim, is a school teacher. So the timing of the marathon is kind of after school's, been back in session for, a couple of months, and it's a good getaway. So we selected the Chicago Marathon as my first, and I witnessed your first, Jeff. You didn't get to witness mine, but after I finished mine, I think somehow I made it to a little grassy space, and I just laid down, and I was there for about an hour before Kim and my brother him and his wife had come up and for that first marathon experience. But yeah, I actually have run it 15 times from 2000 to 2017, and every major accomplishment of my running career, kind of intersects with Chicago. So
Yeah. Yeah. So couple years before mine, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and we have a story about our last 2017 was both of our last Chicago's, and we got some stories on that. So yeah, our next guest is Tim Bradley. Tim is the president of CARA, the Chicago Area Runners Association. Tim, if you don't mind introducing yourself and your relationship to, I guess, Chicago and the Chicago Marathon.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, when I was thinking about this question, it actually goes back a little bit farther than I thought. So I've been with CARA, the Chicago Area Runners Association, since 2018. So I've been kind of in a support role as we put on our marathon VIP experience for all of our CARA members and people in our annual summer marathon training program. But yeah, going back even further, as I was thinking about this question, remember watching the race on TV. Believe it or not, David Morris, who set the American record in 1999, was my college coach for 1 year when I was at Western Illinois. So it certainly was something I was very aware of, while I was in St. Louis and, working with runners at Big River Running and training people kind of in the early to mid 2000s. So yeah. It goes back a little bit farther than I thought, but yeah, the last couple of years has kind of been up close and personal. Our marathon VIP experience is half a mile from the finish line. My former boss is now the senior director of operations. So we kind of get some inside info from time to time, and their warehouse for the event is also next to ours at CARA. So the relationship just kind of gets deeper and deeper, and we've got a great relationship with the marathon, and we've had former CARA staffers work for them now. So yeah, I feel like it goes back a lot farther. We're more intertwined than originally thought. But yeah, certainly it's a support role and helping as many runners cross the finish line as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you run it?
I haven't. That's the big thing, right? I'm always working it. So no, I think I've done everything but actually get a chance to run it. So we usually have about a 4 a.m. wake up call after working the expo for 3 days. And then, yeah, it's a 12-hour day for marathon day. So I don't know if it's easier to run it or to work it, but I will be working it again this year.
Nice. Well, appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. We're really look forward to it. And our last roundtable guest is Christina Pellerito. Is that how you pronounce it? Pellerito?
Perfect.
Christina from the St. Louis area also is running the Chicago Marathon this year. Christina, why don't you introduce yourself and your relationship to Chicago Marathon?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jeff, for having me here. This is such an honor to be on your podcast talking with you all today. So I am still kind of a running novice myself. There was one night late at night in 2017 when I couldn't sleep, and I stayed up on Netflix just flipping through documentaries, and I found Spirit of the Marathon and Barkley, the race that eats its young. And at that point, I had run in high school, and I just kind of dabbled in short distances, but I wasn't really a committed runner at that time. And I watched both of those documentaries and immediately knew that I wanted to be a long distance runner. And since then, I've watched Spirit of the Marathon like a million times. We own it on our Amazon Prime, and every time I see Dina Castor and everyone else, I just get so inspired. But I've been to Chicago many times. I've had a couple really awesome kind of life-changing experiences there. So I'm really excited to have another life-changing expance with combining running with being in that city. So very excited about that.
Great. Now this will be your first road marathon. Explain your running history for us to understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
For this being your first Chicago.
So another thing about that night back in 2017, I knew that I wanted to be an ultra runner. So that's the first thing that I did when I first got into running in 2019. I joined the Daily Run Club, which is a running club out here in Washington and Union, Missouri, where I live. And it changed my life forever, just being with these people who run, and, you know, it's a group of all shapes and sizes of folks. But the one thing we share is this deep passion for running. And so through the group, I became connected to my first ultra race. It's the KD 50-50, and it's no longer an active race that's happening. But I ran my first 50K, and it was exactly in 12 hours by the time cutoff. I got injured at mile 12 and just hobbled the rest of the way. And then my second ultra was 2 years later at A Slinger in Cape Girardeau, where I did a 50K again. So my hope is with Chicago is I want to do an official marathon, and then I've got big goals for ultra running after this. So just excited to knock this milestone out of the way.
That's great. That's great. So, I mean, starting with your experience with these two races, right? And knowing these two races, one is, you know, I think the KD 50-50, you said 2019, there was probably, was that 2019 when you did it?
2020.
2020. Okay. So there was probably even less than 19, right? So there was probably, I don't know, maybe 50 people.
Yeah, not very many. Yeah. It was
and
small.
Then A Slinger probably has about maybe 100, maybe, you know, across the whole weekend. So now you're jumping into a race that has over 40,000.
Yeah, in their biggest year ever, right?
Biggest year ever. So
what did you say? Almost over 47,000 registered? Is that correct?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's yeah, start to wrap your head around that one.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, there's a lot of ins and outs, I think, that are going to be, you know, hopefully useful, but for understanding how to navigate with 47,000 people. I think, that's crazy insane. So Tim, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about, you know, you mentioned how CARA, and you have now the warehouse that's right next to the, you know, the warehouse that holds the marathon, you know, stuff, I guess, right? What's the history and the relationship of the marathon and CARA and all of that? I know the marathon started in, was it 1977? I think.
Yep. 1977. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's an interesting history, and I'm always a pretty big history buff, especially on the running side. And, yeah, as you saw, I kind of shared with the group, for those that don't know, WGN ran a really interesting story at this time last year. They had unearthed some archives of the first marathon, and you know, had some really, really cool footage of the race, and, you know, where it used to start, basically downtown in front of Daily Plaza, and then finish at Buckingham Fountain. So but yeah, I mean, 1977, the race started, and it was kind of like, hey, New York's got this race. You know, certainly Chicago's always been in competition and notoriously looking up to New York and wants to one up them. So the idea came about, and you know, kind of some of the major players in the area met, and, you know, they decided to do it with the idea that they're going to actually put it on the roads and not just run it through the park district. So that was a pretty big decision by Mayor Daley, who unfortunately passed away, and then they named the race after him in his honor. And so that first race, you know, took place in 1977, and actually had 4,200 runners. So still would be a big number today. So a huge race at the time. And the following year, because the race did lose money, they decided to double the price, and they wanted to put it much later in the day, like somewhere between like a 10:30 to noon start in September. So you can imagine the concerns, the temperatures. You know, it was like kind of business interest, political interest, and you know, commercial interests were taking hold of the marathon, and that's really where CARA came in, and felt like there was this advocacy void on the runner side. And yeah, they showed up to the second one in 1978. depending on who you talk to, they wore black armbands to protest the cost of the marathon and the start time. And that kind of initial energy, excitement, and advocacy has really sustained CARA for now 45 years. But over time, the marathon and CARA started to work together and collaborate to the point where even CARA was taking over the aid stations and really helping organize the race and the runners and the volunteers. And then certainly as time went on, created a specific training plan for it and grew that. And, now we're kind of all lockstep together. And, we've got a charity team that gets bibs from the marathon, and we share warehouses, next to each other. So,
Nice.
It's really been an interesting relationship. And Kerry Pankowski, the CEO, comes to our training sites every year. So we've got a great relationship with him. Like I said, my former boss is the senior director of hops. So, it's just such a cool history, and to see like where we're at in the relationship and how strong CARA is right now and how strong the marathon is. It's just really cool to see.
Yeah.
So I have a quick question about CARA. Kind of ties into the marathon. I'll kind of get to that, but like every big city, and I'm sure every small city, we all have running groups. I know Chicago has a handful of, or at least when I was there, a couple of big running groups. I won't call them competing, just various running groups. So anyway, CARA has, they're a nonprofit. Can people, and they put on their marathon race day. I know you've got your VIP stuff. I know you have your ready to run the 20-miler race, which we can maybe touch on later, getting ready to run. Can people not in Chicago join CARA and still get some of the benefits that CARA members get on race day?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we started way before the internet in the 70s, but as things have evolved, we have a virtual program, so people are able to follow our training guide for the summer marathon training program. And then we also offer an option where if you're St. Louis, where my parents and brother live, you can essentially follow the training plan, come in for ready to run, do our 20-miler that's on the lakefront as your last big training run, and then come back on marathon day and do our marathon VIP experience. So we have a virtual local option for people that are in the Chicagoland area, and then we have a virtual out of area option. We basically can have people follow our training plans from all over the country, all over the world, and it is really cool. Every year we'll get somebody who's in town and they're from a different part of the country or different part of the world, and they come join CARA, or they jump into our 20-mile training run. So that's certainly something we've offered over the years, and again this year.
Okay, great.
Nice.
And we can touch base on it a little bit more. Just I know that when you have when we talk about the race day, what it's like the morning of, I know that those VIP things can be really awesome.
Yeah. And even all the charities, right? The charities all have different options and different packages. I want to step back though when you mentioned the 1977 and the protesting before we get into more of the race. What was the price in 1977?
So it started at $5 and they bumped it up to 10 in 1978. Right. I'll let you
and you protested that.
I'll let you do the inflation calculator. Yeah.
I'm going to.
And that's that's kind of the dirty little secret is I think we and I've thought about doing more education and advocacy on it, especially now that CARA is really back into the event space. But I think when you're running throughout the marathon, like those are all just costs that you're running by. So, right. The first marathon lost money. Probably the second one maybe did too. But it takes a lot of, it's a lot of expenses, takes a lot of sponsorship dollars to put a race in position where it can, be sustainable and grow. And so even something like the Chicago Marathon struggled with sponsorships, in its first maybe 10 to 15 years. So, So, I mean, now the price is obviously a lot higher than that, but believe it or not, it's typically nobody gets into the event world for like this huge, profit gain. But that's just the nature of the beast. And there's a lot of expenses and costs that go into it, especially putting on a safe marathon with electronic timing, with phenomenal amenities that literally pretty much covers 26.2 miles.
Right.
So yeah, be nice to all the volunteers and all the staffers out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's insane. It really is. Of what would I just the logistics of putting that. I put on, a local race here, and it's just the logistics of that, which is a, 20-mile loop in the woods compared to something that is run through the streets of Chicago and shutting down, and we've seen, and we'll talk about the marathon itself, and you're shutting down major streets that, that are, throughout the world, just to be able to run this marathon. It's crazy, insane. And how they did it for $5 and $10 in 1977 and 78 was crazy in itself for 4,300, runners. So, very cool. Now, registering it has for the marathon, just based on the growth, has changed over the years. I imagine back in the 70s and 80s, it was probably a lot easier to get into it. I don't know if they capped it or not. Byron, when you ran it, your first one in 2000, you said 2000. What was registration like at that point?
It's hard. It's hard for me to remember. I guess I couldn't. I don't know if I did it online or not in 2000.
That would be right on that edge, wouldn't it? Like right on that. Yeah.
I really can't remember. I do the one thing that I remember was all of those early races. They would publish the results in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be searching for a newspaper the morning after the race to take in the car back to St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to scratch my head. I don't know whether I sent in an application in paper or what.
Yeah. Now, there was not a lottery. Do you know when the lottery started?
Now that I know they started maybe 2010. Right. My bad. 2010 or so. I remember I got a status because I had run the marathon so many times that when they did start limiting the registrants, I had a time period where I could, if I wanted to run it again, I could apply and get in. I can't remember what the status is called.
Because you've always been a legacy runner in Chicago. Yeah.
It kind of built up.
Yeah. What because I think even when I signed up for my first marathon for Chicago in 2015, I want to say the lottery was in May. It was in like March or April or something, and the lottery results came out in May. So I had time to think about it. I think that was the problem was, or it could have been done more last minute, really, I think is what it was. It was like I ran my first, half marathon, and my brother-in-law was like, hey, let's sign up for Chicago. We still have time, and I want to say it was in March or April. And then you found out in May. Now I think, Tim, I don't know if like it's December, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much like it almost feels like the marathon gets over and then pretty much the process starts right back over. And sometimes we'll get an email like the day after the marathon, like, when does summer marathon training registration? But
right,
the longer process. And we've got group leaders and CARA members that say, I used to train a little bit, and then you'd sign up in August and then go race it. So, but those days are long gone for sure.
Yeah. Christina, is this your first time putting in for the lottery, or had you tried before?
So I originally got into Chicago so I'm trying to get my years together. In fall of 2021. So I guess I registered in November. They pulled in December. But I had gotten injured while training for it. So I had to defer to this year. So I'm technically on a deferment.
Okay. Okay. Good.
But
That
still,
works
it's
out.
the first time you got in, like, and that's scary, right? Like, she's like, you register for the lottery. I'm not going to get chosen. Like, oh crap, I actually have to run it now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and you've known for 2 years now that to prepare, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this one like? Oh, go ahead.
Nope.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna kind of transition. So if you were staying with that, then
Oh.
I was gonna say, so when you have that much lead time, the one positive thing is that you can better plan what kind of a training block you want, like how much. So when did you start? I was looking at the calendar. I cannot believe we're so close. We are 3 weeks away from race day. So it is like, is the 20 mile, is this weekend
It's this Sunday, so our 20 miler, and then it's 20 miles on Sunday. Yep, and then taper time already. Yep.
Wow. So Christina, how long, what length of a training plan, like when did you start actually training for the marathon?
Great question. So I actually hired a coach. I'm working with a running coach right now, and we technically started doing some work back in January, just as like a foundation on a foundational level. And then I believe we officially started our training late April or early May of this year.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think you've done your 20 already, right? Or do you have another one?
I did it last weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's on the schedule for this weekend?
12.
Starting a little taper.
Oh, you're doing a 3-week taper?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So have you gotten received all of your information for the marathon yet? I mean, being 3 weeks out, have you gotten have they sent out all the information on, where to stay, what things to do, what the procedures are, all of that?
Yes, I have to say for the amount of people that they are, managing, the information's been really great. So they send emails, and when I say they, I don't know who the entity is, Tim, so correct me if I say this wrong, but we received, I think, the final email with like the big it's like a 50-page PDF packet last weekend with all of the final details of the expo, where to stay, restaurants, other protocols that we have to follow on race day.
Okay. You got bib numbers and everything?
Mm-hmm.
So do you mind sharing what corral you're going to be in?
Jeff. Okay,
you don't have to. You don't have to if you don't. You don't have to if you don't.
I'm just very slow. Like I'm nowhere near the elite level at all. So I'm in corral N. So I'll be in the very back.
None of us are elites. We've all been there.
I know. I don't know why I get self-conscious.
I think even with mine, I made Byron come back to run with me to move back up.
So one thing I think when you're talking about like a 50-page packet and all the info about where to stay and the expo and everything, something about not just Chicago, but like any big city or big marathon major or anything of that level, you don't necessarily think of right away is you're going to be on your feet a lot before race day. So like that's something that I think everybody going to any big city race should probably like spend a lot of time thinking about, like, how can I minimize my time on my feet? There's no real way at the expo to do that because it's a huge expo. But and it's exciting too when you're in a different city than home, to explore. But
and I think that's why I asked about the corral too, is to realize the time that you're going to be on your feet before the race even starts, right? So that's important. Expo, Byron, how much money should Christina bring to the expo?
All of it.
If you're a big spender, I mean, you can find just about any kind of running paraphernalia that from all of the clothing gear, shoes, nutrition, everything. So, to Tammy's point, I mean, spending time, I mean, Chicago, has really, I would say, probably one of the greatest expos of any marathon that I've been associated with. And when you think about, if you're staying in downtown, you're going to have to, find out how to catch a bus to get there. And so you're on your feet, getting to the bus stop, you ride there, and then it seems like it's a mile even after you get in the building from where the bus is drop you off. You go up an escalator and, get through all the lines. And so, yeah. I mean, you could easily, if you're tracking your steps, you can probably put in a good 10K or half marathon, just the day before,
the expo's at McCormick Place still, is that correct? So yeah, for people that have never been there, I mean, big enough, first of all, it's where the auto show is in Chicago, which is also huge. And then I think there's now a 5K hosted there around the time of the auto show.
Yeah, we actually run we do a 1 hour run, and so the course is a 2.4 mile loop. So that's how big the McCormick Center is. Inside, yeah.
Inside, wow.
Crazy, yeah. And every time I go back in there to set up, I'm just like, this place is huge. It's so big.
So yeah, beware.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's definitely something you want to plan, right? So if that's something you're interested in, then, plan on that. And I wouldn't do a, shakeout run beforehand, because that's going to be your time on feet. Right.
Yep.
But, it's definitely worth at least kind of walking through it. I mean, it really is interesting. And I know then they have, I'm sure that they published the agenda right already, but there's a bunch of talks and a bunch of meet the authors. And CARA has a booth, I'm sure, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you do presentations too? Do you have any presentations?
Yeah, typically we do not. We're typically managing either some type of check-in for Marathon VIP or just doing kind of an info on our event day VIP. But yeah, there are speakers you'll typically find. It could be elite athletes, former champions. That'll give talks, or inspirational speakers, or kind of endurance celebrity type folks. But yeah, it's a huge venue, and you'll definitely have to spend some time there. I think sometimes, which I think most of you guys probably know, but the security component now that is involved in it, and then you personally have to pick up your packet from these world majors now. So your Bostons and your Chicagos, you really gotta have your ID, go through security. Pick up your bib, and you certainly have to allocate, a good amount of time for that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, don't forget that stuff, I guess, right? Don't forget your ID. Don't forget your the little ticket with the bib number and all that. I'm sure, bring everything you can. And I guess bring enough money to buy a new pair of shoes or something, So yeah, the expo's definitely one to not pass up, but you want to really manage your time there, right? Because you could, like Byron said, you could put in a 10K.
Yeah, easily.
How has the expo changed a lot over the years since you started, Byron?
It's always been huge. I mean, it's just, I think it's just gotten bigger, but it was even, the first one I did in 2000, it was just amazing when you get there and, and you see all of the, when it's your first marathon, you're just in awe of, because you see all the runners, everybody's walking around in their running shoes and, looking fit, and you you want to feel like you're all prepared, but it's kind of intimidating the first time you do it, and you see all these people who are they're much faster
Yeah.
than you are for that first marathon. But I think the beauty of Chicago is because it's so big, you've got the whole event surrounding it. But when you run the race, actually, you become, your own celebrity with all the, the crowd support that you get, which is, I think that's probably one of the, main reasons I just kept going back. My friends would always say, well, what you going to do this year? And somebody would answer for me, he's doing Chicago. It never disappointed me. It just kind of was always a great experience. You just get nothing like it. I've run Boston, but the cheering that you get in Chicago is just nothing like it.
Nothing like it. Yeah. So the other piece that's nothing like Chicago is the food. So where should Christina go for her pre-race meal? You have anything picked out
very
yet?
strong opinions on that.
Oh, man. I'm kind of nervous though about like potentially going out like the Saturday night before the race, because there's going to be 47,000 people in Chicago in addition to all the inhabitants. So like, I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I want to recommend.
So I mean, and Tim as well, any of us, but Byron, like you have a routine down, don't you? You have like a Saturday night routine down.
Yeah, we when our friend Jill started running Chicago, and I don't know how many times Jill's probably got 10 or 12 Chicago's herself.
Yeah.
And so when she started coming up, we started, putting some planning into it. So we would, several months ahead of time, Jill or her husband, Dan, would make reservations. And we found one restaurant, probably we went there, Jeff, with you, Martino's Italian restaurant. I think it's around State in Ontario. And it just kind of worked out that they could accommodate a large group. So, at some of the later years, it would be a pretty good sized group of us who would all, want to eat dinner the night before. But plan it if you can. You'll have to plan it in advance, because it's just so many people are looking to load up that night before. So even if you're going to have it delivered, just have it all planned out.
So I was going to offer my suggestion of my favorite place that I missed, that I want to like drive up to Chicago just for the Italian food, but it is not downtown.
Ooh.
That could be the plus or minus, because it's not downtown, but then the way Chicago traffic is, it's 8 miles away or whatever, but it can take you an hour to get there. Kalo's restaurant, it's in Andersonville.
Yep.
It is so good. Like,
what? How do I spell that, Tammy?
CALO.
This podcast is no way associated with these restaurants.
But if they want to send me any pasta or pizza, I will happily take it.
Get me in trouble.
Okay.
I must say, seriously, I've lived in St. Louis now for 8 years, and there's only some restaurants that I still miss from Chicago, and that is one of them. And the fact that it is outside of downtown, perhaps maybe is easier to get food.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I don't want to go downtown. Like, no, I don't want to try to deal with that.
Are you staying downtown?
Kind of, yes. So we're very lucky in that we have a friend who lives pretty near the race route. So we are actually staying with her and her husband that weekend.
Nice.
Good.
Thank God, because looking at the price of hotels, I literally almost passed out.
Yeah.
Wow.
There is that. Yeah. And you really need 2 nights. And that's the killer, is that you really need 2 nights. I tried to do it one night and it just didn't work out. So
yeah, I can see that.
yeah.
Well, Christina, maybe one of your 2 friends, the husband or the wife's a good chef, can cook up some
They are.
some pasta.
They are, but I want to check
best.
out this Italian place, whether we do it on Friday or Saturday.
There you go.
I like your passion, Tammy.
And Tim's agreeing with me too. So something too, and maybe Tim can talk about it from like the coaching aspect of it. From what I understand, like carb loading should be like done throughout the week.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be just the night before. So I think a Friday night dinner, my 2 cents, Friday night up there sounds great to me. Maybe less crowded.
Yeah.
Gonna be eating a lot of food that week.
Yeah, that's the one, and that's where when I grew up as a kid here before I moved to St. Louis and then moved back here 5 years ago, Andersonville was the neighborhood I lived in. And yeah, Kalos is a institution up there in Andersonville, and it's been around since the 60s. And yeah, especially Friday night where you have a little bit more time to burn to get up there on the north side and visit that. But yeah, I mean, your diet, I always tell people, like, sometimes what people are eating in the short term gets, overrated or examinated too much, but then the long term, how your nutrition has been over the course of your entire training. And, presumably you're going into race weekend, rested, well hydrated, well fueled. And obviously you just try to avoid anything too rich or too heavy that leaves you like, sluggish or bloated on race day. But yeah, certainly carbohydrates are pretty safe, and most people have been eating those throughout training. So, but yeah, but try to stick with stuff your stomach is familiar with.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, so we've gotten through the food, the food part. We definitely can have some more recommendations, right? Tim, does CARA do, the CARA runners, do they have a get together like on a Saturday night before the race as a meal?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have so many local people here that everyone kind of has their own tradition, or just eats, in their home or goes in their neighborhood. So yeah, we typically have never had to organize anything the night before, but we are at the expo for 3 days straight. So that's typically where we're at. And then, the morning of, we, either have water and Gatorade at Marathon VIP or some type of, granola bar, type snack before or after. And then we're in the Palmer House, so there's a Starbucks in there. There's actually quite a few amenities in some of the hotels. So they do a pretty good job downtown, whether it's in the convenience stores or, a Walgreens or the hotels. They know runners are coming in. They know they're going to sell a lot of Gatorade, bottled water, snacks. So typically when you get in, if you scout out your surrounding areas, you can kind of find what you need on race day.
Yeah. So as we get to race day and we get to the morning, right, getting to the marathon, and, I've always stayed relatively close. So it was always a walk, but I can imagine that could be a logistical nightmare from anywhere in the city. Right, Tim? I mean, what are all the best ways to get there?
That's a good question. Yeah, and obviously the official marathon guide outlines it all, but it's so much information that it's like, how do you really break it down? So the CTA here is extremely sophisticated and well prepared for events like this. If you think about Chicago, we've not to be too braggadocious, but this is almost like another Sunday for us. We've already hosted Taylor Swift. We've already hosted NASCAR. We've already hosted Lollapalooza. We've already hosted the Taste. So Grant Park and that surrounding area and the event staff, both from the Chicago Marathon and the city of Chicago, we put on large events a lot, and especially in Grant Park. So the CTA is ready, it'll get you there. There's all types of different lines that run throughout the city, whether you're coming from the south, north. So CTA, is very reliable and it's really probably your most affordable way to get down to that general Grant Park area. The Uber game or Lyft game can certainly get you there. A lot of that just comes down to like surge pricing, and it's 40,000 people trying to get an Uber at the same time.
No.
So I've noticed certainly in my travels to Boston and experience with the marathon here, that can be a little bit of challenge because traffic is just going to be brutal. And so that one's just a little bit more challenging. And then, trying to drive and park, which believe it or not is what I do to get to our marathon VIP. If you do it early enough and you're talking 4:30, 5 a.m., you can actually get in before some of the major street closures. But that's kind of high risk, high reward. And you gotta get up pretty early the morning of the marathon to be able to just drive downtown and park in a garage.
Well, then you got to get out.
Exactly.
Yeah. See, I work a 12-hour day, so by the time I get out, there's no worries.
Right.
But yeah, you're going to be stuck there for a while as well, depending on how long you stay after the marathon. But yeah, those are your like three most common options. Obviously, you have things like taxi. I mean, there'll be certainly people that divvy. There'll be certainly people that scooter, but obviously, you want to think about weather as well. So, taking a divvy while it's raining or if it's colder out can be a challenge. But yeah, I try to encourage as many people to like trust the CTA as best you can. Cause again, it's going to get you like right down the area. It's like, $250 to get on the train. So it's really affordable and they've got all types of different routes. And that's really the only thing going on that Sunday morning. So, usually they're queued up, ready to go. And then, yeah, you don't have to worry about parking in your car or things like that.
What time would you recommend taking the train?
Depends, of course, on your wave. The trains generally should run pretty close to on time.
Okay.
But, the earlier the better. And it also depends on your wave. And it's still going to be at least a half mile. When you get dropped off, depending on which train it is, you'll be within a mile of the start of the race, but you're still going to have a little bit of time there. So, yeah, it's really it can almost be like a 2-hour window before your race that you're starting to head down, and you kind of just have to err on the safe side and know that you're going to be on your feet for a good amount of time before the race actually starts. So,
I expected that, but thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, and I think that with you in this, the reason why I asked is, if you're in that wave, whatever, 3 or 4, right? By the time you kind of show up and start walking, or when they get there, it'll have already started.
Yeah.
So getting around will be a little bit more difficult, I think. But what is it? I don't know what time like the corral closes, but you're still going to be standing there for quite some time. What I always did, depending on the weather, and it's always chilly. So it's always a chilly morning. It may be like 80 degrees by, 10 or 11 o'clock in the afternoon or in the morning, but it's always chilly in the morning is, getting a throwaway sweatshirt, to walk around in. And then I just, he's go use the restroom, use the porta-john, one of the trillions there that you got to stand in line for.
I've heard about that too. Nightmare stories about the porta potty line.
But I never had really a bad experience with that. I mean, I don't know, Byron, but we're always able to find something.
Yeah, that's a polite way to put it.
Oh, God bless.
Yeah. But then you stand. So the corral closes and then you're going to stand, right? So you'll be locked kind of in that corral, it'll be a slow move forward.
But your
panic attack.
Your adrenaline's going to be pumping, and just the excitement of it all. I mean, the atmosphere, again, I've never stood in that crowd. I've raced some of the big Chicago races, but not the marathon. But like just that excitement of all those people there, they're about to run with you. It's like I get goosebumps just thinking about it now. Yeah, it's exciting. And I don't know if Jeff, how much you wanted to talk about the start, but I mean, I kind of wanted talking about that excitement and going back, like Byron had talked about the crowds and everything. Like it is, and so everybody, I mean, I can speak to it from the spectator side, but like, are there times that there are not people standing on the side of the road cheering for you?
No. I mean, that the whole 26 miles, it's lined, and some spots are going to be 50 deep, but the entire course, I don't think there's a space where there's not people standing and cheering.
So for me, the only time I remember on the course was running through the park. It must be mile 4 or 5 when you kind of run through the park when you're getting up into Wrigleyville. It's a little quieter up there, but then as soon as you turn back around, it's back being loud again.
Yeah, in Wrigleyville, it's always some sort of performance going on.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Boys Town. Well, every neighborhood has their thing, right? But I used to live in Boys Town, and so that's where I would just like roll out of bed and just walk to the marathon course, and that's always super fun. A lot of drag performers, a lot of fun, loud music, and like you hope if there is somebody that lives on the marathon course that is not a fan of the marathon, you hope they're out of town for the weekend, because that is starting to play early in the morning and not stopping until who knows what time. And so hopefully, I think that something in my mind, again, I never want to do a marathon, but like if I were to do a road marathon, Chicago is, because of the crowd, I think one that I would want to do. Mm-hmm.
So I do have to back up a little bit, because Tammy wouldn't know about this because she's never run it. But there is something special about the first quarter mile, right, Byron?
The first quarter mile.
Or the first half, at least a half.
Well, I mean,
if you miss the bathroom.
You're going kind of through the tunnel, and
you're going through a tunnel.
Yeah. So, if nature calls, you might have to, I have observed people that have responded to the call.
Hundreds of people when I've seen it. You will see, literally, you go through a tunnel, right? Tim, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
Just have to forewarn. But yes, mostly men will split off and go to the side of the tunnel.
Mostly men. I don't think women in a big major road race are stopping. And
I think there were women too. There's women too.
They do.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, so Toto, you're not on the trails anymore, huh?
So choose your breaths wisely.
Oh.
That's really my point of that is, choose your breath, wisely, because especially being where you're going to be at in the, in the race, you're going to have about 40,000 people in front of you. So I had to mention that just because, that is a key component of starting. That's this, starting the marathon. So
good times.
Yeah. So so you head up north, right? And I don't have the course, and you've probably memorized the course by now, Christina, right? Sure.
Just a little,
but, as we kind of go through it, the fact is that it goes through the all of the major, the major components, and I guess Chicago, is it boroughs? Is it sections? What was it again?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, definitely not boroughs.
No, that's New York,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
it's basically neighborhood area. So there's
Neighborhoods.
77 neighborhood areas, and then
That's
depending
it.
on who you talk to, there's like 220 separate neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's basically these community areas, neighborhoods that you're going up through. North. Well, you're downtown for a little bit, north end of the town, and then out west, down south, and then back to Grand Park. So
And each one of them has their own unique characteristics, and
yeah.
that's what's so fun about it. And then what Byron, what is any one of those areas stand out to you as far as one of your favorites that you would always just love to go through?
Well, I would always, be looking for whoever was there with me, supporting me, like Kim, my wife Kim would be there. So her strategy was always to meet me or look for me at mile 2 and 12, which were out and backs, and just cross the street almost and catch me from 2 to 12. And then she would
12 is when you're like looking straight at the crowd and then you turn right? And isn't that like, it's really easy to find somebody because you're seeing them for like a mile.
Right. And then she would catch the train and go down to Chinatown, and I would see her there, and then she'd cross over the train tracks and back over to South Michigan, I guess, and catch me there. So, but all of the neighborhoods, were special. I mean, because you would see, them, if were the Hispanics, they would have their dress, their native dress attire on, and the buildings, and so it was the experience of just getting through all the neighborhoods, and once you've done it a few times, you're looking forward to the different experiences that you're going to get, south side, the people down there, and the different music that styles that you're gonna experience. So
yeah, I am a sports guy, so I always enjoyed, you go up to Wrigleyville and, you can kind of see Wrigley Field from the course, if you crick your head and look through, then you come down, but then you have the United Center, and then you have, Comiskey Park, and then you're coming back. So those are always good landmarks for me as I was running it. Right. Tim, you said that CARA does like a bunch of the aid stations, right?
We used to, yeah. I mean, since then we've certainly handed it off to other folks. Yeah, but it's back. I want to say we'd have to get some other CARA historians. But yeah, I think it was more back in like once they kind of started to come back together. Yeah, probably towards the mid 2000s, maybe, or mid 80s, when they were doing part of that. But yeah, since then, we have a lot of our CARA members that will volunteer for various groups, and there's more aid stations and more support than ever. So yeah, they really rely upon the entire community, whether it's a running group or non-running related group, to provide all these different aid stations. I think it's something like you got to have 200 volunteers for one aid station. So
yeah,
it's pretty amazing the production level that it goes up to.
Yeah. Had you ever worked an aid station? I know Tammy worked an aid station, and I got questions on that. Have you ever worked an aid station?
I have not had to do it for the marathon, but I have done it for other races on the lakefront.
Sure.
The F3 half marathon up here in typically late January, early February.
Okay.
CARA's in charge of one of those aid stations.
What can you talk through what kind of support the aids, kind of support that the race has throughout the race as far as aid stations, food support, those kind of things?
Yeah, and the participant guide is typically a really good resource for that. So in recent years, they've been up to as many as 18 aid stations. So like when you're going back and talking about, people like going under Whacker Drive and having to use the restroom, I think one thing, whether it's beginning marathoners or anyone, like, nowadays there's there's enough water on course where like you're not going to dehydrate, like unless it's just a crazy hot year like they had in 2007. Like there's enough water on the course, there's enough bathrooms on the course. So, if you've had, enough to drink and you've gone to the bathroom, like you don't need to just keep pounding water sitting in the corral or, like the night before. So, so there's 18 aid stations. Depending on where the stations are, they have either some type of gel, goo, bananas. So usually you can reference the course map and we'll say like on the aid station, like bananas are here, water, Gatorade. But yeah, there's certainly enough of the fluids and support. And then you also have to think about what your own individual fueling plan will be. So if you've used a unique product or a product that is not provided, so Gatorade products, which is like PepsiCo products, have been part of the marathon for a long time and is our sponsor as well. But if for some reason you're really big into Powerade or you haven't really used any of the products that might be on the course, then you might be looking at bringing those on your own and carrying them yourself, and then just supplementing that with the water on the course. But the it's still certainly a concern. But in terms of like the amount, the quantity and support, like again, barring like a 90-degree day, like you're going to be good on that front. So just think more about your own individual products that may be different than what the marathon provides. And then of course, like, have you been practicing taking goos and gels and, have you been doing that on your long runs, so that you just feel comfortable doing that and consuming fluids. And those gels are hard to open and get down your mouth, so all those things have to be kind of practiced on for the day of the race.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know some are going towards this, and I think Chicago is one that vests are not allowed. Is that correct?
Guests, you saying?
Vest.
Yeah,
Vest.
Oh, vest. Yeah, that's always a big question. They from all the literature that I've always seen, they do not allow you those traditional.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Full vests, because those are essentially backpacks. And obviously there's always post Boston bombing, I think there's always a little bit more of a apprehension to any type of large bag or duffel bag. So so I have seen I don't know if they got banned, within the last couple of years or if they were always banned, but that's And again, with 18 aid stations, I mean, do you really need to carry gallons of water on your back? I think
No. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of like and Hal Higdon, I feel like I've seen a little bit of it, but we're kind of ready to move away from, again, there's just so much product and there's so much aid on the course, at least for like a Chicago marathon, that you shouldn't feel like you got to lug 2 gallons of water with you at all times.
Right.
So
no,
again,
you shouldn't. Yeah.
No, I say that, but unfortunately, the caveat, like when it gets into the 70s, 80s, 90s, like New York did have problems this past year, but there's really there's just nothing you can do when you get into those 70s and 80-degree temperatures.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, and that's where it gets into practicing what's on the course, right? So you don't have to lug that with you. So you can, you can hit an aid station every 2 miles, and it would be just fine. So I mean, and so I mentioned that because Christina mentions her, ultra running background where, we carry everything. Yeah. So, but keep it on the aid station piece. Tammy, you said you worked in aid station.
I did.
Yeah. So tell us about that and what the aid station makeup is and how that is, what the runner can expect from somebody working at an aid station.
You mean like what if you're volunteering at an aid station or when you come?
Well, tell us what the makeup of the aid station is. And
so I work at a water only aid station. So it was around, I was just looking at the current year map of the course. So this year it's like mile 11. It's probably around that all the time. So North and Wales. And so just if you're coming to work in an aid station, just be prepared for a very long day. Like I said earlier, I don't remember the exact time I had to be there, but it was probably about 5 a.m., even though we were 11, 12 miles in. So you're not seeing the first runners for a little bit. But you get there early. Everybody divides up however many tables of water and Gatorade, and then you just start prepping everything. You line up all the cups, you pour the water, you put a layer of cardboard down, you do another row, and you have like stacks and stacks and stacks of cups. Coolest thing about working in aid station, I will say, if you are a running nerd, if you like watching marathons for fun, if you love to see elite marathoners up close, work an aid station, because you are on the course and the elite runners come through and they have their table right there with their stuff and you can see them. And it is so cool because, like Byron was saying about the spectators running deep, like, yes, I've had trouble like getting to the front to see the race, but it's super fun in those early hours. It's, you're waiting for the elites and they come through and then you have time, and it's, it's pretty slow until all of a sudden it is not. And then there's the rush. It's a workout. Like if you're standing there for hours holding cups and water, Gatorade water, and it's like always the same hand because you're on one side of the road. Like I said, and different than trail races, people just toss their cups there. Some people try to make it into the trash cans or trash bags, whatever, but you are raking them up so that people are not tripping on them. So there's that also just constantly happening, and trying not to trip runners as you are raking cups up. So the biggest thing I would say that helps when you're running an aid station for what the runners can do is just make sure, if you want a cup of water or Gatorade or whatever, make eye contact with the volunteer. Tell them you're coming for them. Grab it and keep on going. If you're not walking through it, or even if you are walking through it. But, we're out there scanning the crowd for who might want it. And, we'll save that cup for you if we make that eye contact with you. We'll make sure that you get it. Yeah.
I think Byron, I think it was you, maybe it was Jill, that always taught me when I first ran it was walk the aid station because you will probably fall if you're not. Right. You will probably slip on some Gatorade.
That could have come from me in my later
in your later years.
in the early ones too. So but the ground is full of Gatorade. Yeah.
And the cups are easy to slip onto you, and the volunteers will try to clear those from the course as quickly as they can, but it's hard to get a rake out in the middle of hundreds of runners coming by at a time.
Yeah. Those first couple aid stations, man, it is mass chaos. Because people are darting in and out, and they're running, and they're cutting in real quick and then cutting back out, or they're trying to run through, and then people are slowing down and walking. Some people are running; they're running into people. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it seems like mass chaos from what I remember.
I would add that there's not just one table of water; there's a lot, and they're not next to each other.
No, it's a long.
You do not have to stop at the first table. Like, you can keep going, and you will have another opportunity until you don't, and you'll be able to tell when that last table is. So don't feel pressured if you can't get to that first table on time.
Yeah. Course profile. We didn't really talk about this, but Chicago's known for not too many hills. I didn't even. One thing I wanted to go back and look and see like what the total elevation gain was for when I ran it, but it can't be more than 100 feet, a couple hundred feet maybe at the most, right? But biggest hill, Byron, biggest hill.
It's probably when you're getting close to the finish line, you make that that turn off of Michigan, and
Yep.
you go up to what is it, Columbus? Or
Yeah.
It's up Roosevelt and
up Roosevelt. Yeah, and that hill at that point in the race is tough.
And I do want to be clear, like for people that run in normal hilly environments, it is not a hill by any stretch. It is a Chicago hill.
So and it's like you're at mile whatever 26.1. Yeah. So I would say that it probably is from but I do remember, like, like I said, it's been 5 years, but surprisingly, the bridge, each of the bridge crossings has a little bit of a hill to it. Mm-hmm. Like you'll be coming up on, a bridge, and I don't know, do they say, Tammy, how many bridges there are? Is it like 13 bridges or something?
The map doesn't say. I mean, I could theoretically count them.
But, I think it was like 13, but each bridge has just a little bit of a little hill to it, a little bit of a bump to it. So, but yeah, so 26.1, you're going to hit that hill and you're going to make that turn and you're going to see the finish line with less than, what is it? I think it's like 200 yards to go or 100 yards to go. So anything, Byron, as you cross that finish line, I think that's one of the coolest experiences I think that I have ever had. More than any of the ultras that I've run, that's probably the one that finishing Chicago is one of the most memorable experiences. I would say, for positives and negatives, one, the support when you finish is just unbelievable. And I don't know, like if Tim, if you guys have you guys have volunteers out there helping people, but there's somebody that is right there, one, handing your medal. Then you move on to the next person. You get your blanket, your space blanket, and then you get a bottle of water, and then you get a banana, and but the thing with it is they keep you moving. It's like a conveyor belt. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was the thing. And then the walk to meet the family and to the area, right? So, there's I don't know what they call it, like the runners, meetup points or whatever, right?
Yeah, the
reunion. Runners reunion.
Reunite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about a mile.
Yeah, it's a good long walk. It used to be that they would have it right where those fountains were, and it was not as far. But I think for security reasons, they pushed it a little bit further away from the finish line, and so yeah.
Yep. And there's medical attention, that if you need it, there's medical attention every, it seems like every 100 yards, there's a medical tent. There's people there that are kind of looking out for people that are, needing help or needing some kind of a medical attention. So that the attention to that is just unbelievable. Anything, beyond anything that I've ever seen before. And then you meet up with your family. And there's, I think, is there still festivities in that, like that reunion area, Tim?
Yeah, they have something, I believe they call it like the 27th mile now.
Yeah.
So fun fact, which Carrie always reminds people of, the Chicago Marathon is the only world major to serve beer at the finish line. So
is it really?
Keep that in mind. Yeah. That's what he says. But yeah, I don't recall any of those serving full size beers. I think it's actually a 16 ouncer that you get. But yeah, they do have something now called the 27th mile post party, which is on the Monroe Drive entrance. So so there certainly is some post race festivities to be a part of.
Yeah, great. And then you've worked your way back to your your friend's house, your hotel, whatever, right? Everybody just kind of disperses, but you're on cloud nine. Hopefully you can still walk. Hopefully you can still, you're still mobile and you can find your friends. So I know that there's like an area, there's that runners reunion, which has like, you can meet people, like they have polls that are, A through C or, and, D through F or whatever. There are those. And then there's also like the party in the park area that you can meet your family and friends too, but it's still a hike. So if you think you're done, at the finish line, you're not. You still have about a mile to go.
Never.
Yeah. So that's the Chicago Marathon. I mean, it is an experience that Byron's done it 15 times, and then that's got to be enough enough endorsement in itself, right?
Yeah.
Well, we don't know how crazy he is.
And over that same period, I ran 35 marathons.
Right.
So, but still, Chicago was by far the one I did the most and enjoyed the most.
It was the one you kept coming back to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Tim, you ever think you're going to run it?
Once I retire as executive director. So
I was going to say that.
Thought that when I first moved from St. Louis to Chicago, I was like, all right, great. This is a great way, to get back in shape. So I had been coaching at St. Louis University for 11 years and pretty much had been retired from competitive running. And then, I quickly realized how much we are involved the week of the marathon, whether it's the expo or the morning of, and how early we get up. And so we always say, when you join CARA, you're definitely like going to run less. But yeah, maybe one day if we have a slightly bigger staff or I retire as executive director, and then train for it. But I do remember we have had people that have attempted it, and our staff will be like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Because you're gonna have to set up Marathon VIP like the day before." So yeah, but I tell you what, we get a lot of joy out of it as a staff. Every once in a while we do have a staff member run it, but even when we don't, like the amount of runners we get to see, and like this 18-week journey we've been on with all of these runners, we've got 2,400 runners in our program this year, and that's 2,400 different stories. So like awesome. When it all comes together on marathon day, we get to see like all the different PRs and just all the accomplishments. It's just as emotionally draining and physically draining. I feel like as running, a marathon. But yeah, it's a special event, and it's amazing how long you guys. I sent you that video with all the history and like what it's had to go through, survive to be as big as it is this year and as successful as it is.
Awesome, yeah, and I'll definitely post that the WGN article or the WGN page to the show notes, because I think that's really cool to be able to show that history. So. Christina, am I missing any questions or anything that you have on the whole experience?
No, I feel like we painted a really clear picture, and now it's just 3 weeks left until it becomes real,
Yeah.
So we need to spend the next 3 weeks praying to the weather gods, right? We're praying for 40 and clear.
As long as it's not hot, like I feel like the worst part of this process has been training through the summer here in Missouri, where it's just been awful. We had a horribly hot summer. So honestly, cold is good. Raining, I don't care.
One time I did it, it was, I want to say 30 or 32 to start. Like, perfect. I think that was 01. And then I ran it in 07, Tim mentioned, when it was, I think, over 70 at the start, and it quickly was in the 80s and 90s. But I was running pretty good in 07, so I was able to finish it. It was slower than I wanted, but
I
got done before they closed it down.
that was the one year they shut it down early. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was hot the 2 years, the 2 years in 15 and 17 that we ran it together. Both. And I mean, it was, like I said, it was my first in 2015, and then in 17, I thought I was going to PR again, and it was hot, and I fell apart again. I think we all fell apart, and Byron and I actually have a pinky swear, which I'm probably going to break, of that we weren't going to run it again after that because it was so hot. But I will probably be breaking that pinky swear, and I might have to do it again at some point. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll definitely go hang out with the CARA runners. Yeah. So, Tim, any final thoughts on or advice for the new runners, or somebody running the Chicago Marathon for the first time, or returning, or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big planner, so like I would write out an itinerary for your whole trip if you're coming to Chicago. And like I said, I do travel to the Boston Marathon every year as well. So yeah, that's even for myself, and I'm not even racing. I write out minute by minute itinerary. So yeah, I think get your reservations, know where you're going to get your food, know when you're going to go to the expo, and that can save you. It's a little bit stressful doing it beforehand, but when you do it and you kind of set it and forget it, then you can just enjoy the trip and just execute your itinerary, and you don't have to do all that thinking and mental energy the actual weekend of. So especially if you do it a few weeks out, and then you don't have to like look at it for a few days, and then when it's time to actually travel, you've got your flight. I mean, this is how psycho I get with it, but I think some people appreciate it. You've got your flight information, you've got obviously your hotel information, you've got where you're going to eat, when you're going to eat, when you're going to visit the McCormick Center. Any of those numbers, you're going to get a wave number, a bib number, a gate number. So there's a lot of information thrown at you. And so like the more that you just compile it, and you don't have to like scroll through your phone to find it, and you don't have to, go to different sources. You just have it like one piece of paper. Then it helps a ton. I can't tell you how much it helps. So that would be my advice, is plan ahead.
Yeah. Byron, what about you? Any final thoughts for a new runner or a new Chicago runner? Somebody that has been as seasoned as you?
No, I think Tim's advice was right on point. Just being prepared, as far as knowing where you need to be at a particular time, and getting to that start line, because that's where the anxiety is that morning, getting up, eating whatever your planned meal is, and getting that transportation to that spot, and inevitably the traffic's going to slow you down somewhere, and you're going to get nervous, and you just build in some cushion, and just have that plan laid out in advance, and as Tim said, execute on it. The first time I did it, we were staying out in the suburbs, so we had to drive in. It was 2000. I think we parked on a surface lot on the other side of Soldier Field, but we got up and we were on the road at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm the kind of person, even if I'm there early, that's fine. So I don't have to be, I don't have to stress, get there, right, and just find me a spot and sit on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely the same way as when we were even walking to it. Like, I wanted to get there, I wanted to get into the corral, or at least wanted to know where the corral was, and I could go and find you guys and hang out, and we could just sit and relax and not have to worry about anything. So it's definitely different than showing up to the trailhead where there's, only 40 runners running, and, you just show up and, you get the pre-race instructions and you go, so it definitely is different than that. So Tammy, what about you? Any final advice for Christina or a new Chicago runner?
Enjoy it. Just take it all in. I think that while Chicago is, I'm sure, a course to set a PR at, especially if you don't normally run flats, I feel like it's a course to really just like enjoy what you're doing and try to just take something out of the whole 26.2. Just enjoy it. It's a fun city and it's a fun race.
I feel like with running, like, I don't know, something that I've learned along the way in my journey is you can't take it too seriously. Like, I understand that there are professional athletes and elite athletes who have to, but if it stops being fun, or if you stop getting enjoyment out of it, then what is the point? Like, I think that's a really great call out, Tammy. Like, it just being present and enjoying the experience. Like, Tim, you guys in your teams, you put on this event. Like, I don't want to rush through it. I want to soak it all in. Like, who knows if I ever get the opportunity to do this again in my life. So, yeah.
So, and definitely go see Tim at the expo. Go look for Tim. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't quite this number yet, but yeah, we'll be there. And now it's 3 days, so plenty of time.
Maybe bring him a coffee.
Yeah, a big coffee.
Yeah, I will. If we got time, I think I'm trying to think what my record is. Well, a couple years ago, I was on 2 large Dunkins, a Red Bull, and a few other caffeine items, and it was a tough crash after that. Yeah.
Sounds like speaking. You were prepping for an ultra.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And whether on the race or can be pretty rough. Yeah, and I always feel bad for the workers have to be there like a whole another week and a half just to take down everything. So it's so have them in your hearts, because they stay there long you leave.
Yeah. Well, thank you for everything that you guys put into that and everything that you put into it, because it definitely is an experience to remember. So, but everybody, thank you very much for participating. I think this was great. Really going to be, I think this will be beneficial for anybody that is running it. Hopefully we'll get a lot of feedback. So for the listeners out there, please provide some feedback. You can always get us on Instagram, on Facebook at the Endurance House Podcast. You can join our Facebook group, the Endurance House Facebook or Endurance House Podcast fans. You can leave us a rating on the any of your podcast apps or podcast platforms, and leave us a review. Love to hear what you think about this format. I think that hopefully everybody got something out of it. So until next time, thank you very much. And, Tim, Byron, Christina, thank you. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
And Tammy, thank you again, as always. We will see you out at the Chicago Marathon. Thanks.